Hi guys, it's Julie Spencer, author of the Buxton Peak series. Today we are going to be starting into the prequel to my Buxton Peak trilogy, which is called Buxton Peak: The Early Years. This is probably one of my favorite books that I've ever written, so I'm really excited about it. If you love this video, if you love my Read to Me series, I would love it if you would subscribe and like and share this on social media so that lots of other people can enjoy it. As I've probably mentioned in previous videos, the Read to Me series is dedicated to my friend Leslie Masters, who is blind, and to all the visually impaired community. I hope that you enjoy having the opportunity for me to read to you. So with no further ado, we will start into the book, and we are going with Buxton Peak: The Early Years, Chapter 1, Child Prodigy +3. Ian poked his head through the partially opened door, hoping to eavesdrop. "Claire, I cannot continue as your son's instructor." Mr. Ashton's voice was firm as he sat across from Ian's mum. "But he needs to learn to play the piano." She leaned forward, desperation pulling her shoulders together. "He seems to have a natural talent." "That's why he needs to move. He's already exceeded my ability." "Move? Move where?" "I would suggest Manchester." Mr. Ashton placed 2 brochures on the table. "Charlton High School has an exceptional music program where Ian will have the finest instructors. They even have a recording studio on campus." "High school? He's only 8 years old." "Yes, I recommend Claremont Primary School in the interim." He pointed to the second brochure. "They also have an excellent music program, although I'd contact the high school as soon as possible to find a private tutor." "Are you suggesting I drive an hour to take him to school every day?" Her voice rose an octave by the end of her question. "Or you could rent a flat and stay during the week." "That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard." Ian's mum stood suddenly, pushed her chair away, along with her usual proper demeanor, and balled her fists. "Ian," Mr. Ashton peeked around Ian's mother, "could you please come in and sit at the piano?" "Yes, sir." Ian pushed into the room and obediently settled on the piano bench. Leave Buxton? Music program? Recording studio? His heart raced with excitement. "Now, Claire, what is your favorite hymn?" Mr. Ashton asked. "God Save the Queen," she said. "Ian, would you please play God Save the Queen for your mother?" Without opening a hymn book, Ian played the hymn from start to finish without a single missed note. When he was done, he brushed his shaggy brown hair off his forehead and smiled at his mum. She dropped into her chair and gaped at him. "Now, what is your least favorite genre of music? One you would never play in your home?" Mr. Ashton pulled open the glass door on a shelving unit, revealing rows and rows of colorful CD cases. Ian raised his chin, trying to peek around his teacher at the cornucopia of music. "Probably jazz," Mom said. "It grates on my nerves." Mr. Ashton pulled down a case, carefully removed the CD, and loaded it into the player. After pushing a few buttons, he found a song and let the music play for a moment. "Ian, have you ever heard this song?" "No, sir." "I want you to listen to it all the way through, as many times as you need, and then play it on the piano." Ian turned back to the keys and concentrated on the notes while listening to the strange music. He understood why his mum didn't like it, but he saw the notes dance before his eyes, feeling the rhythms and hearing the intricate delicacies of the individual sounds. He listened only once, then placed his fingers on the keys and plunked a little, trying to mimic the song. He stopped. "Could I hear it one more time?" "Of course." Mr. Ashton started the song over, and Ian listened all the way through again. This time, when his fingers danced across the keys, the song was almost flawless. "An hour isn't such a long drive," his mum whispered. "Stop, stop, stop!" Ian called out above the noise of the high school band. "The bass guitar is out of tune." Mr. Hayward lowered his baton, and every head in the crowded band room followed his gaze. "Ian, you can't just interrupt class like this." Even though he was only 12, Ian knew every inch of the music rooms and each instrument within. He'd been coming to Chorlton High School for tutoring since they'd moved to Manchester. Ian ignored his teacher and mentor. Mr. Hayworth was used to Ian's antics, but many of the kids in Year 7 were transfer students from schools in Manchester and the surrounding region. The first day of high school was never a good time to cause problems in class. Some mouths gaped, some kids looked annoyed, some amused. All had raised eyebrows. Ian carefully set down the trumpet he was holding, pushed back his chair, and weaved his way across the room. A kid named Andy stood with a bass guitar in his hands and the strap clipped around his shoulder. Kai Burton, Ian's best friend from Claremont Primary School, sat next to Andy and held an electric guitar on his lap. Kai's brown eyes sparkled with mischief as he stuck his foot out to trip Ian, and Ian glared at Kai before turning to Andy. Although the guys were playful and impish outside the band room, music was the one thing Ian took seriously. "May I?" Ian didn't wait for Andy to reply. He just released the clips that held the strap in place and slid the bass guitar from his classmate's hands into his own. Expertly clipping the strap into place as if he played every day, Ian sat on a nearby chair and began turning the knobs on the head of the instrument. He strummed a few chords, tightened a few knobs again, played a few more notes, and smiled as he stood to hand the guitar back to Andy. "There you go." "You're really weird." Andy's smirk told Ian he was grateful rather than annoyed. As Ian passed Kai, his friend rolled his eyes. "Show off." "You're just lucky I tuned yours before class," Ian mumbled on his way back to the brass section. "What's your problem, pal?" Kai's voice filled with anger at the kid who had accidentally shoved him against his locker. Ian was shocked by the hatred in Kai's expression. Andy stood at Kai's shoulders and raised his chin. A year and a half into high school, and Kai was a head taller than most students at Chorlton. At 14, he was already filling out like a man. This scrawny boy was no match, but he furrowed his brow and puffed his chest as they locked eyes. "Excuse me for tripping." The kid narrowed his eyes in hostility. "You shouldn't have left your satchel so far out into the hallway that my feet got caught. I can leave my bag wherever I want." Kai balled his hands into fists, and Ian wormed his way in between his best friend and the kid who was stupid enough to cross him. "Guys, break it up." Ian stuck his hand out, offering himself as the middleman. "You must be new. I'm Ian." Entering a new school halfway through the year was hard enough, but getting beat up on the first day wasn't a good way to get things started. The kid still had his eyes narrowed at Kai. He looked down at Ian's outstretched hand with disdain, but reluctantly shook it. "Gary." "You've met Kai," Ian gestured with a nod and pulled Andy over into the circle. "And this is Andy. Come say hello to our new classmate." "What's up?" Andy raised his chin in reluctant greeting, his sandy brown hair hanging low on his forehead. "There, now we're all friends," Ian said. "We're going to get on just fine, right?" He raised his eyebrows and looked pointedly at Kai and then Gary. "Whatever." Kai turned and sauntered away as if he owned the hallway. Andy regarded Gary coolly for a few more seconds, looking him up and down, before following Kai. "It was very nice to meet you, mate." Ian nodded and strode down the hall. "Ian," Gary called after him. Ian turned back and raised his eyebrows. Gary's expression softened. "Thanks." "See you around, Gary." "What instrument would you like to play today?" Mr. Hayworth asked Ian as he walked into class. "I'm feeling the snare drum," Ian replied, rubbing his chin as if contemplating. "Oh, good, you can help our new kid learn the ropes." Ian turned toward the back of the room where Gary poked around in the percussion section. "It's Gary." "Great, you've already met." Mr. Hayworth clapped him on the shoulder, effectively nudging Ian in the direction of the drums. Ian approached the back of the room, apprising Gary as he did. The kid's sullen expression and the way his dark brown hair hung low over his eyes hinted at a troubled past. But Ian wasn't concerned about his mysterious new pal. He wanted to know the important details. "How long you been playing?" Gary startled, but he regarded Ian. "Since I can remember. You?" "I don't know." Ian sauntered around the snare drum and picked up a set of sticks. "A while." Ian twirled one of the sticks in his right hand, challenging Gary with his eyes and a tiny smirk. Gary answered Ian's smirk with narrowed eyes and stepped around the opposite snare. He didn't bother with the sticks next to the drum, but pulled his own set out of his jacket pocket. They were beautiful, with just the right amount of wear, but none of the dents and scratches of the practice sticks. Ian gulped, envious of his new dueler. "You first," Gary said. Ian didn't even think as his sticks flew in an intricate rhythm he was sure could never be matched. He never broke eye contact with Gary. He played for a full minute before stopping, expertly crisscrossing the sticks and holding them steady. Gary held Ian's eyes and copied the complicated pattern of beats as if they'd been laid out in front of him on a sheet of music. He ended in a similar manner and raised his eyebrows. "You go first this time," Ian said. They still hadn't broken eye contact. Ian sensed they'd drawn the attention of other students in the band room. Gary changed up the rhythm and added some complexity, challenging Ian to rise to his level. Ian held his own as he copied Gary's pattern. When he was nearly finished, Ian nodded just slightly in invitation, and Gary's sticks flew along with Ian's almost as if they were copying each other in perfect synchronicity. It only took a few seconds to realize they were playing the drum solo from Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. It was just simple enough to be an easy duel for the talented young drummers, but complex enough to be quite impressive to their growing audience. They played through to the end of the solo, and Ian reached over and rolled a simple crescendo on the cymbals. The entire band room erupted in applause, and amidst the chaos, Ian and Gary reached across and shook one another's hands. Their smirks had become full grins. He wrapped his arm around Gary's shoulder and turned to Kai, who stood beside Andy. An unspoken understanding sparked in their eyes. The four young men regarded one another. Something big shifted in Ian's life. "Mates, I've got a brilliant idea." That is the end of Chapter 1 of Buxton Peak, the early years. And I will get started into Chapter 2 next. Hope you'll continue. Hope you'll like this video and subscribe to my channel and share this on social media. See you next time.